Hello and welcome. You're watching MF Corner. I am Sumaira Abidi. Now, a lot of you may be aware, and in fact, many people have been asking questions about what's the way forward for the Franklin Templeton case. Now, you may be aware that, SBI Mutual Fund was asked by the Supreme Court to give out the first tranche of payment that's close to about 9,100 crores. Well, most of it has been done earlier this week. And subsequently, what happened was that the Supreme Court has now asked them, that's SBI Mutual Fund, to also undertake the liquidation, the winding up of these 6 schemes and also distribute those proceeds to the unit holders, right? So how will things move from here? Everybody wants to know, how soon am I going to get my money? Well, we'll try and answer as many questions as we can. So we have 2 guests joining in today, and let me welcome both of them. Gentlemen, good afternoon to you. We have Mr. DP Singh, who's the Chief Business Officer at SBI Mutual Fund, and we have Feroze Azeez, Deputy CEO at Anand Rathi Private Wealth Management. So therefore, let me bring in Feroze, who has no such compulsions. Feroze, you've done an assessment also of all the schemes, right? So can you give us an idea of which schemes are pretty much out of the woods in terms of, which have the most number of these saleable bonds, and where might investors still find the going tough?
I think, Sumaira, like you said, that there is a lot of money which can get liquidated, like Mr. Singh said as well. But if you look at the natural maturities in this calendar year, for 2 schemes, Ultra Short Bond Fund and the Low Duration Fund, the liquidity is going to be relatively easy. That's what I'll assume. I'm sure the specifics with respect to color code, which I think was something which Mr. Singh pointed out, is going to be very interesting to see. But natural maturities and the cash which has come subsequently for these 2 schemes is 65 for the ultra short bond fund and about 42 for the low duration fund. So these are the ones which I would assume are easily liquidatable, and the rest of the bonds should be sellable in due course, relatively easier. I think the one which is the one which has the largest maturity or modified duration, which is the Income Opportunities Fund, that's going to have its difficulty to liquidate in entirety. But I'm very confident, given the mandate to SBI to facilitate this, given their scale, size, and capability, it should be relatively easier to find buyers without haircuts.
And Income Opportunity is the one which is currently not cash positive as well, right? You're expected to turn cash positive soon. And, since you've studied these maturities, what is the assessment of how much money can come back and by when?
See, I think they are today negative about 1.25% in terms of cash, or 1.5%. If you just look at the maturities of this calendar year, that is 2021, we are looking at about 8-9% of the portfolio becoming mature. So you would be 7-8% cash positive on 2 conditions: that nobody defaults, and second, that there is nothing else sold. Then also you will be cash positive about 8% in this calendar year. So both these hypotheses, given these hypotheses, you're looking at about 8% cash in natural course of maturities.
Okay. Feroze, is there any bond which is also on your buy list which you think can be absorbed by any of the ongoing schemes?
See, I think from a bond portfolio perspective, I think from SBI analysts, if they have those bonds which they are in their buy list, if they consider buying them, but I think to avoid vested interest, SBI would not bid for those bonds. That's what I'm given to understand. But having said which, the SBI has the capability to identify, and given their size of about 12 lakh odd crore, including the PMS mandates which they have, they should be able to find a third party buyer, if not absorb them in their schemes. Point 1. Point 2, the research team, I think they have about 6-7 fund managers on the debt side, and about 8 odd credit analysts who have been managing the credit risk fund of SBI, which has been the top performing one in that category. So one is to say that these bonds have a capability of getting absorbed in the existing schemes of the asset management company. Point 1. I think that will be avoided because of vested interest from a pricing standpoint. But I think the capability on the analyst side and the fund manager side is deep enough, expressed in the form of the stupendous performance, even in the same category, SBI Credit Risk Fund, has been a top performer, and they've not had defaults for the last few years, where several of them have, I think. And I think one thing which you raised, which was very, very pertinent for all Franklin investors at a point in time, was the segregated portion. Quite a few of those segregated units are marked at zero value, but they have an immense amount of value expected. For example, the Vodafone one is expecting a large payout in July, August this year. So I think everybody should take note and make sure that they are the demat accounts or in the physical form, and track the payouts which are expected to come in spite of they having a zero value on paper.
No, fair enough. I totally take your point on the segregated, and which is why I wanted to ask, because, some of it will be coming in, and it's a totally different set of investors, right? So, I mean, my own assessment was that SBIMF wouldn't be involved in that. Okay. Feroze, one final question to you. After a long wait, these unit holders are seeing money coming in. And the thing is that now the money is going to come in chunky ways, right? I mean, people got 50% of whatever they had invested, say, in the ultra short fund, and another fund they got 60%. So what do they do with these chunky payments that are coming to them? What should be a good investment strategy for them? Because a lot of this would be SIP money, right?
Yes, there could be a large liquidity which comes to an investor. The reinvesting, of course, depends on each individual portfolios. To my mind, if it was debt allocation, ideally it should find its place in the debt allocation, and a person should not get overly excited about the equity returns of the last 1 year and move their assets from debt to equity. But if they should try and make sure that this liquidity which had actually gone out of the window is back again, should be allocated as per the asset allocation. There's a tendency, especially looking at the last 6-8 months rally of almost about 70-80% on Nifty, there'll be a tendency to skew it to equity. But I think stick to the asset allocation, point one. Point two, go into schemes on the debt side which don't have a credit risk, and also an interest rate risk, given the kind of borrowing which the government is going to be having. So point is that safe debt schemes is what would be the alternative. And if the asset allocation permits some equity allocation, then of course the liquidator can be a beneficiary of the assets which are being liquidated. And there are several schemes which you can invest on the equity side. But I think net, I think the most important thing from an investor standpoint is it has been handed over to one of the brands which is synonymous to trust from an India standpoint. So that's great news. Liquidation capability is immense. So it's great news that we'll all get our monies as investors.
All right, Mr. Singh, Feroze, thanks very much for joining in and for explaining this. And I'm sure, we'll need explanations, going ahead as well, as in when this liquidation process takes off and, of course, progresses thereon. Thanks very much at the moment for joining in. All right, so for everybody who had queries, I hope we've been able to provide at least some input, some answers about how things are going to move from here. But the one thing that comes through very, very clearly is that there is going to be no more long, endless wait now for unit holders in these 6 Franklin Templeton schemes. Payments will start getting made, and they will be made regularly. And the other thing that Feroze pointed out is that some of the segregated units also, could see payment coming in. So that will be another positive. Thanks very much for watching.